You're just styling.
Everybody, we have 30 seconds, and I think there's a lead with Comcast. So we probably, at this point, want to be quiet. I'm not telling you to be quiet, but just suggesting. May 19th, 2020 meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Welcome to this third virtual meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council. We do, as of today, plan to be back together in this council chamber, again, allowing council members individually to make their own decisions based on their health risks. But we do plan to host the meeting back here in the City Council chambers on June 16th, which is the third Tuesday. Typically during summer months, we meet one meeting a month. So we have meetings set for June 16th and July 14th and August 18th. We will invite the public again into these meetings. They'll be socially distanced and our chairs will be spread more than 6 feet apart. But again, we do invite you back in here. It's been quite the experience to hold these meetings virtually, but I think we've, under the circumstances, held them quite successfully. I do want to make a comment about open podium, which we typically have when we have people gathered here in this chamber. Open podium is an opportunity for Eden Prairie residents to address the City Council on issues related to Eden Prairie City government prior to each council meeting. Typically, during non-summer months, the first and third Tuesday of each month. This open podium occurs between 6:30 and 6:55. And it's in this council chamber here at City Hall. If you wish to speak at open podium, please contact the city manager's office at 952-949-8412 by noon of the meeting date, if you can, with your name, phone number, and subject matter, which helps us be better prepared for you. If time permits, after scheduled speakers are finished, the mayor will open up the floor to unscheduled speakers. Open podium is not recorded or televised. If you have questions about open podium, please do contact the city manager's office. This evening, we do have a donation to accept, and we also have a presentation. So, Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. I am going to turn this over to Chief Weber, who's got some really good news on a donation.
Thank you, Rick. Mr. Mayor and council members, in the past I've brought in donations from our Eden Prairie Crime Prevention Fund. And more often than not, there's kind of a deeper story that goes into some of these significant donations. And tonight I'd like to share with you a little bit of a story here. We had a woman who lived in one of our senior living complexes. Her name was Ruth Whitrock. And evidently Ruth enjoyed interacting with the police officers and had developed a relationship with some of them and enjoyed their company. And when she had passed away earlier this year, she had asked that her son, Dr. Jeffrey Whitrock, make a donation to the police department to help us with any of our programming. And when Dr. Whitrock had contacted me, I asked that he send those funds to the Eden Prairie Crime Prevention Fund. As you know, we are trying to develop a better drone technology program here in the Eden Prairie Police Department to help us with looking for lost people or searching large areas. And tonight, the Eden Prairie Crime Prevention Fund was generous enough to donate $4,736.99 to the city for purposes of that drone program.
Thank you, Chief. And again, we make this comment every single meeting. I think it's justified that these donations just help our dollars, our city tax dollars, go even further. We can't do it all, but when these private donations come in, they really assist the work that we do. Council, this does require a motion. Unless there are any questions or comments, is there anyone that would please make the motion? Councilmember Freiberg.
I'll make the motion. Move to adopt a resolution accepting the donation of $4,736.99 from the Eden Prairie Crime Prevention Fund that was donated from the Whitrock family to purchase a drone for the Eden Prairie Police Department.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
I think that was Councilmember Aho. Yes. Thank you so much. We just to inform the public again, whoever's watching this, we do require, the state statute requires a roll call vote for every single motion during virtual remote type meetings. So could I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Aho,
Aye.
Councilmember Freiberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson, Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Mayor Case.
Aye. Thank you so much. So under proclamations and presentations, we do have a presentation this evening, and I'll turn it over to City Manager Getchell to introduce.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. If you've obviously been able to be anywhere near some of our highways 212 or in and around the town center, you're probably seen over the last 6 months, there's quite a bit of construction going on. So we had asked that the project office, council Southwest LRT project office, come in and provide a construction update, a project update, and that's what they're here to do tonight. I believe we have Jim Alexander providing the presentation with some help from Mr. Makoviak, both of who have been at many council meetings in the past.
All right, thank you, Mr. Getchell. This is Jim Alexander. Mr. Mayor, council members, I really appreciate you having us here tonight to talk about the project. We're really excited about the goings on. I have a few slides to cover, and we'll be glad to take questions as we go through. I'll cover through construction and talk about a little bit about our vehicles, and James will pick up on the outreach piece. So Sam, if you could advance the slide there. So here's our, so we are Green Line Extension, looking to open in 2023, 14.5 miles, getting all the way out to Eden Prairie Southwest Station, and 16 stations all told. Next slide there, Sam. So here's our overall schedule, and we're, of course, right now in construction. If you, unless you haven't been in Eden Prairie recently, you see, I think I counted 18 cranes out there today. I went out to take a look, and it's really busy. A lot of things happening, so we'll have some slides to talk about that. We're also building vehicles out in California, and we'll have a couple of those coming in into town here later this month, and getting that ready to operations in 2023. Maybe next slide there, Sam. So funding sources, this is maybe a familiar slide that we've shown in the past. Overall, the project budget is a little over $2 billion, and local committed funds over $1 billion. We're looking for FTA to supply the remainder through a full funding grant agreement that we're still working with FTA on. So local partners, we take this to heart. Locally at Eden Prairie, we have the city, of course, working very closely with Robert Ellis and his staff at this juncture, and MnDOT is playing a big role in some of the bridges we have going over 212, namely, and Three Rivers Park District, Riley Purgatory, and 9 Mile watershed districts, and Southwest Transit. We continue to cohabitate while Southwest Transit is operating buses out of their facility while we're under construction. So just kind of overview of construction for the project. These first 3 cells, if you will, the utilities, site prep, and structures, that's really what's going on in Eden Prairie right now and elsewhere along the 14.5 miles. lot of utility work that really needs to get out of the way first before we start working on the guideway for the LRT and the bridge structures. But as you see out, just look out on a roadway within Eden Prairie around the center, that we have structures popping up out of the ground quite a few places. Next slide there, Sam. So I have a few construction slides. We're going to start out to the west, and this is an image taken earlier this year. We have the waiting area that we worked out with Len Semich and his crew to house bus patrons in the interim. And the building that you see in the kind of the middle of the picture is now gone in the next slide, and we're now putting in a lot of piles. You see a retaining wall back in the background on the right side there, but a lot of piles. I think we have about 1,800 more piles to go on this site. There's a little bit of a soil challenge. And moving as we head on to Prairie Center Drive, we have an LRT bridge that comes out of the southwest campus area and runs along Prairie Center Drive, and then over and then up on the hill slope to behind Costco there and Bachman's. This is an image that looking at the LRT bridge, the abutments and pier being constructed over 494. This is adjacent to Flying Cloud Drive. Next slide. This is kind of the first semblance of a bridge structure on the whole project. We have about 7 or 8 spans done now with the girders put in place for this LRT bridge over Valley View Road. This will end up heading over way to the 9 Mile Creek crossing and into Golden Triangle. And here's just an image of that LRT bridge at the 9 Mile Creek. Kind of hard to tell, but there is a bridge structure that 212 just off the left side, and we'll be heading over Flying Cloud on bridge structure and landing at grade over at Golden Triangle as we make our way into the station on the next slide here. This is the station, really starting to take some shape. They just poured the slab for the station platform, so that's pretty exciting, and you can see some elevation work there. Here's the rendering of what it's going to look like once we get it all said and built. And then at the other end of this area next to Shop HQ and Whiteboard, we have the bridge structure that'll eventually go over Shady Oak Road and Highway 212 and make its way over to City West Station. And then not necessarily in Eden Prairie, but we're pretty active working on the tunnel structure that's going to go under Highway 62. This is the Minnetonka side of things, where we shifted traffic to the south of the area to construct this east segment. We'll eventually get this all built and then shift the traffic to the north and build the west segment. And the station will be underway as well. I might pause there for any questions regarding construction before I get into vehicles.
Council. Great, keep going. This is very interesting.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an image out in Sacramento, California, where Siemens is building our vehicles. This is the first one doing some final detailing. This is actually on a freight train heading towards Twin Cities as we speak. We should be getting that here in the next couple of days. One of the differences between our design that we use for Central Corridor, the Green Line, and this Type 3 is we've made accommodations for wheelchair access all the way through the train. So we made some accommodations to adjust the seating to make way for that. We think this is a better fit for everyone. A little bit about development opportunities. We have some numbers here on the next slide. Looking at the existing lines, green line, blue line, a lot of things happening in terms of permitted and planned development. And on the southwest line, the green line extension, it's really picking up. A little over almost $1.5 billion for permitted and about $500 million in planned development. And here's some other figures in terms of residential units, and this is along the 14.5 miles of the alignment. And so it's pretty robust numbers given where we are in construction on this project. So I'll pause there if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'd hand it over to James Makowiak.
One question that I would have regarding the funding, I know there's been I think it's a third letter of no prejudice from the FTA regarding the $900 million of funding coming from the federal government. have we, what have we heard on when we might expect funding to be extended to the project?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council Member, oh, that's a very good question. We are working with FTA very closely. We have the FFGA application in, and we believe it's all complete. It's going through final reviews to the DOT, and we expect that FFGA to come anytime soon here. We are under a letter of no prejudice for everyone understands what that means. That allows us to spend local dollars and be reimbursed once we get a full funding grant agreement with the FTA. And we have currently LNP number 3. And so that's looking to carry us into the early summer. And we're hopeful that we can get that FFGA landed so we can have that full funding piece in place.
And my understanding is that Hennepin County has been funding the current construction, so that construction continues. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Aho, that is correct. Yeah, we work very closely with the county and on the funding. So they're primarily the funders as we're moving along in the construction. And I would just point out this isn't too unordinary. It might seem ordinary for a typical project, but for these type of projects with the FTA, we had 9 letter of no prejudice on the Green Line construction. So we were into construction almost 2 years before we got the FFGA. So it's not unprecedented to take this path, but we would feel more comfortable certainly once we get that FFGA in hand.
Okay, thank you.
All right, hand it over to James Makoviak.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm going to go through a few slides on the communication and the outreach of our project up to date. As you've seen, we try to keep communicating through social media in a number of ways. You can see the different accounts we have with Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Flickr. In addition to that, our webpage continues to be innovative. We continue to change it up. Not only do we have project videos that you've probably seen, we've included some additional videos on, say, you'll see a slide down below, more of an interactive video on trail closures and where they are. We continue to promote tools like our construction communications, like our committee information. I'll go through some of that in a little bit more detail. Okay, another resource, something like that you might find on the webpage, a year look ahead. We try to give people, when we're doing communications, we try to give people not only an accurate understanding of what we're doing, but also especially the durations. And, like an example with a property like Elevate, clearly under the COVID stay-at-home order, you have a number of people who wouldn't otherwise be home. And so you had a lot more people there in the building. And so clearly the management is very interested in all the piling and bridge work that we're doing in that area, for example, to know how long we're going to be doing that work. So we try to communicate as thoroughly, like I said, as accurate as we can within the constraints the contractor faces on the project for the 14.5-mile footprint. All right, as I indicated earlier on our webpage, we've got a lot of great visuals. I mean, you've probably seen the Eden Prairie Town Center Station moving visualization. There's also renderings there. You'll also find on there a copy of our construction information, weekly construction information that we publish online, and also directly to people's emails. So if you probably are signed up for that, and that's the latest and greatest information throughout the corridor. Week by week, every Friday afternoon is published, letting folks know where we're working, what we're doing in order to plan their schedule over the weekend and the week ahead. In addition to that, you can see we've got lots of information that's posted with those weekly construction updates about maps, right? Maps and detours are changing sometimes week by week, depending on where we're working and what kind of closures we have to erect to complete the work. All right, this is the map I mentioned earlier. This is a very useful map if you're a biker. You can click on any one of those colored dots. And for instance, with the blue dots, you click on that area or that particular juncture of the trail, and it'll tell you, where to go on that trail. If you click anywhere on the red map where there's an indication of a closure, it'll tell you where that closure is and divert you to an alternative trail. Very useful and interactive. In fact, I had a hotline call this morning. I was able to direct somebody back to that map and clarify his questions. Very glad to see that. All right, something we've started recently, I'd say back in April, were construction information work groups. These are the people who are nominated by each of the 5 cities, and we have 5 different meetings. We have them once a month. We meet different days at the end of the month. So the membership, we have residents, we have business owners, community group representatives, and primarily their role is to ensure, as it says here, that construction communication through our hotline information we're presenting, the weekly construction updates I mentioned, they're being coordinated and shared in a timely and a user-friendly manner. This is a nuts and bolts working group. We really have created these groups so that we can hear back from members of the community about how we're doing. You know, I often say, and when I'm speaking to someone or in a presentation, you know, regardless of how well or how thorough we plan, sometimes we don't really know how effective the outcome is until we hear from people in the public. So we really value that feedback and these communication, and these information work groups are an opportunity to get that direct feedback from members of the public, who usually most of them are directly impacted. For instance, the CIW here in Eden Prairie, you recognize some of the names. You got Chris Flagg from the Hampton Inn and Nancy Litwin from the mall, William Thermos of Elevate. So these are people who are not only active in the community, but they're also, many of them, directly involved with our construction. Okay, and again, this is some of the feedback we've gotten so far from our CIW's members. They like the new construction update format. I know our team is always trying to keep that fresh, keep it fine-tuned. Maps that we include in those updates, make it easier to understand construction information. You know, a map also, like the trail map that we had a slide of earlier. They desire more detail about what construction methods entail and what to expect. So we have, for instance, a one-pager on something as simple as piling, right? What is piling? What are the different methods? What can people expect? So they can sort of identify the process as they're going through it. Doesn't make it any easier, but sometimes having that information makes a difference. It also discussed specific construction observations people had about dust throughout the corridor. Again, all great input to help us do a better job. We also are developing some content for kids to engage, to have fun, and to celebrate our milestones as we go along. And then lastly, familiar slide here, you can see again sort of a reiteration of the different ways we communicate out through our webpage and our social media presence. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions about outreach, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Council?
Question I would have is, we've gotten, as a council, I know I personally have gotten quite a bit of feedback regarding pile driving and the piling. What kind of feedback are you getting on that? And does it seem like it's letting up, or in terms of the amount of feedback, negative feedback, or what would you say is this current status?
Yeah, it's a great question, Councilman. You know, one of the things that being the outreach coordinator at Eden Prairie that I've been very impressed with is how few people I've actually met who are adverse to the project. Most of the people who call on the hotline, for instance, because of a piling issue, really want to know how much longer is it going to go on. A lot of people also want to know if they're in any danger. People have never experienced that before, people in high-rise apartment buildings, and so they feel their walls shaking. Maybe they see a plate, you know, shaking off a counter, or a picture moving on a wall, and they're genuinely concerned because they really don't have any idea if there is some kind of structural impact on the building. So we're able to share some of that information to them, give them explanations of the extensive noise and vibration monitoring that we have, the protocols that we have, you know, the lower thresholds that we have, so long before there really would be any danger. You know, we would have heard, we could have figured that out, shut down the project. So giving people that reassurance has been very helpful. But again, I think to answer your question, I think most people are just interested to know how much longer it can go on in their area, because it is probably the most disturbing and difficult of all of the construction activities today.
I know from the perspective of working with Southwest Transit, as chair of Southwest Transit, I know we've had some issues with lighting in our parking structure, seeming to be impacted by the pile driving, where we just lost all kinds of lighting unexpectedly and prematurely in terms of the expected life those fixtures. Have we had anyone else report any kinds of issues with, side effects of the pile driving?
Well, outside of just residents and some of the concerns that I shared, right, with feeling their building shaking, right, or maybe a picture actually falling off the wall. We've had a couple instances, right, we've encountered some things underneath the ground nearby where we're piling, which have caused us to have to shut down. But in terms of any kind of general impacts, I think we've been fairly successful in monitoring those. For instance, as you may know, we've had a very extensive communication protocol process with Shop HQ. We've been out there for about 9 months now. Throughout the summer and fall and in the winter, we've met once a week with them, just taking it step by step, trying to be as cognizant as we can of their broadcast concerns there and shutting down many times, as you know. Many times we've gone to night piling in the fall. So we've tried to be as responsive as we can be, but also try to be as sensitive as we can be and just taking that step by step. But, we've navigated that fairly well, where most of the piling is beyond what we call the zone of influence there now. But that would be a good example of how we try to manage it. But sometimes, like you said, there may be instances that where we get an unanticipated consequence, right? But I think they do a generally good job, and they got a pretty good system set up for trying to monitor and control those impacts, those negative impacts.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, what's next? Are we at the end of the LRT report, or is there another speaker?
That concludes our report, Mr. Mayor.
So council, any final questions about anything, any comments you want to make? I do want to say thank you to everyone that came tonight to present. And I think we on the council reflect what the majority of the people of Eden Prairie, that we're really excited and for the opportunities that this will bring to Eden Prairie. And we want to get this this first passenger on the train. But anything else from our presenters?
No, I think that's it. Thanks for the opportunity to present. We'd be glad to come back again to give you an update if you'd like for us to do that later this year.
I think that would be great, actually. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Gatcho, anything else with this?
Mayor, I do not have anything.
Okay, great. Thanks again for coming. Well, I guess you didn't really come out tonight to us, but you certainly took your time to be with us. Thank you.
Yes, we did virtually. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We appreciate you being here. Council, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any items you wish to add to the agenda that's currently before us? So seeing no hands raised, is there someone that would make the motion to approve the agenda? Councilmember Narayan.
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Nelson, thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Aho,
Aye.
Councilmember Freiberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Mayor Case.
Aye, great. So moving on to the minutes, from any council member, are there any concerns about either the workshop held back on May 5th, which was virtual, or the council meeting that was virtual held back on May 5th? Any items that you're concerned about, or you want to pull either of these? Okay, seeing none, then is there someone that would make the motion to approve them both? Councilmember Aho.
I would move to approve the following city council minutes. The council workshop held Tuesday, May 5th, and the city council meeting held Tuesday, May 5th, 2020.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Freiberg. Any further discussion? All those in, roll call.
Councilmember Aho,
Aye.
Councilmember Freiberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan,
Aye. Aye.
Mayor Case.
Aye. All right, moving on to the consent calendar. We have items A through H. Council, any items you wish to find out more information about, temporarily pull, anything you want discussion about? Okay, seeing none. Is there someone that would make a motion to approve items A through H in the consent calendar? Councilmember Narayan. Oh, sorry, I saw the hand raised.
I move approval of items A to H on consent calendar.
Is there a second? Councilmember Freiberg. All right, roll call.
Councilmember Aho,
Aye.
Member Freiberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan,
Aye.
Member Nelson,
Aye.
Mayor Case,
Aye. All right, moving on, I believe, to our last item of the meeting this evening, unless I'm missing something except for the adjournment. It would be the payment of claims. So any items, for those out there who maybe have never seen our payment of claims list, it's every check that gets written during the time between the last meeting and this meeting. And there's pages and pages, as you can imagine. Council, any checks or items that you wish to find out more about or to question? All right. Is there a motion to approve the payment of claims? Councilmember Nelson.
I move to approve the payment of claims as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think Councilmember Aho got in there, even though Councilmember Freiberg's hand was up. All right, Councilmember Aho seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Aho,
Aye.
Councilmember Freiberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Mayor Case,
Council, City Manager, anything else to come before the council this evening? All right. Seeing and hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn the City Council meeting of May 19th, 2020? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the city council meeting.
Councilmember Freiberg, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Narayan, second. Roll call.
Councilmember Aho,
Aye.
Councilmember Freiberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan, Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Mayor Case,
What could end up being one of our last virtual meetings in quite a while. I will now move to gavel down this meeting. So this meeting is adjourned.